Hey guys, so I got a request. A couple of you guys wanted a slightly more advanced modeling tutorial, which I was kind of working on but wasn't quite happy with. And then there was another request for how to create lights. So I'm going to kind of jam those into one, and we'll combine a couple things going on here. So let's go ahead and get rid of this guy, and then I'm just going to build kind of a small space here. I'll just do 10 by 10. So we've got something kind of to work with here. And then let me just flip this up so we've got kind of a back area to work with. And then flip this around and flip this up. There we go. Okay, so let's reverse this. All right, so we've got this, what I'm going to consider an interior space. We'll go ahead and group it so we don't bind with anything. So there's a couple different styles of lights. One of the, kind of really popular ones that, or at least not necessarily like popular, but one that you would probably end up using a bunch is just going to be generic fluorescent lights, right? So if it's sort of an office style, what you're typically looking at is going to be a 2 foot by 4 foot. And that's when you end up with, the tiles on the ceiling and the acoustic tiles on the ceiling. So what you'd end up with, and I would block out an area like this, is a 2 foot by 4 foot area. And then you could just put a panel here and then apply a lighting material to that. That's probably a little bit simple for what we'd want to do. Um, Depending on what exactly I was doing, I might come in and actually remove the background here so that we don't get that glitching behavior. And then with these lights, you typically have about a 1/2 inch offset like that, where there's actually a framing element going on. And then if you wanted to just kind of step it up a tiny bit, I'd probably recess this by a 1/4 inch. So 0.25. So that would be a fairly basic fluorescent light right there. Now, if we wanted to kind of make it a little bit fancier, let me get another one here and we'll offset this 2 feet and 2 feet. So this one would be a little bit fancier, and what we're going to do here is, let me get a kind of a picture. Okay, so just as a reference, let me pull this out here a little bit. Okay, so as a reference, what I just created was something more like, oh, I just had some of them here. Oh, it's on the other side. So okay, so what I just created was something like one of these, where you just have a flat panel that's sitting there. Fairly generic, but it kind of works in a lot of spots. But sometimes you also get different ones. So we might have, missed it, recessed ones like this. So one of the issues that you can run into is just when you are rendering, if you're going to create a mirrored surface like this, you're going to run into a couple issues where that mirrored surface that you're working on is going to create more work for your rendering program. But I can still kind of show you how you would do that. So what I would do is I would kind of find the midpoint here, and then I'm going to guess that this is about 4 inches deep. And then it's going to have kind of a little bit of a travel, so we'll call this 6 inches across. And then it's going to be about 2 inches on the side, because there is actually a bit of a profile in there. And then I'll just mirror this across. There we go. And then, depending on how you want to handle this, you can just push-pull this across. And then let's reverse these faces so that we're working with a face on this side. Now, I probably should have actually done this with a little bit of an offset. Let me go back to here, because we do actually want that same kind of little 1/2 inch inset like that. And then we'll go ahead and paste this here. and then scale this side down. See, that's the problem. Alright, let's try it one more time. Okay, scale it proportionally, and we'll just do that right there, and then we can move it into place. Okay, so let's erase this. Okay, there we go. So again, we can pull this out and across, and then we'll have to reverse the faces, and we should have this. Now then, within this we have, just looking at my reference light right here, it looks like there's actually two. So there's one here, and then there's one here that's just out of view. Let me see if I can find a better view of one of those. Yeah, so something kind of like that, where it's actually two separate sections. So that's more what I'm modeling. So let's go ahead and do it more like this style. I mean, you can kind of do it however you want. There's a million different styles. So just for the sake of editing, I'm going to go ahead and make this a group. We know that this is going to be just under 4 foot, so it's going to be 311. I don't really know how I want to space these out. If I can find the midpoint here, I'll create just a little thing that I can drag across. There we go. And we'll just keep hopping on midpoints. Oh, except this doesn't go all the way to the top. It just comes across here, this little reflector. And then I'm going to make it, let's make it a 1/4 inch thick. So 0.25. Doesn't matter which way I'm going to go on that. But I am going to make it a group, and then I'm just going to recenter it. Whichever direction it needs to go. Is that center? Yeah. Okay. So then with this, I can move copy this and what, like 5 inches, 4 inches. Let's try 4, 5, x 6. So that looks like pretty good spacing. And then again, we'll move this 5x4, I think was, yeah. Okay, so we can do that, and then for now, probably could have done these last. We still want to come in here and add the actual light. It's, didn't click the button. So again, one trick I have for this is if you just move stuff down, say a fixed amount, if I move this down 3 feet, I know I can move it directly back up 3 feet. We'll do just a little bit of an offset here, let's say 1 inch, and then we'll just base it on each of these. And then I want to say they're 5/8, but I don't know. How thick is a fluorescent light? Fluorescent light diameter. Actually, we want the radius. T8 is 1 inch diameter, so we'll do a 1/2 inch on that. And then we'll just pull this across to this face. And then we'll just do another move copy across here. We will also group those. And then when you do actually take this into render, let me move this back up, so 3 feet. So something that I would recommend doing anytime you're working with materials that you want to have sort of an accurate light like this, I personally use a color where I would define the color and then rename it so that I can reference it. And I always use one of these bright fuchsia colors. So I would take this, apply it here, and then we'll edit this, and I'm going to change the name of it, and we're going to call this T8 fluorescent. And sometimes if you want, I don't know, you can do like a little squiggly at the front, which will often kind of bump it up to the sort order for things. I don't know if SketchUp necessarily does it in that same order, but some programs will put that little squiggly which is if you hit Shift and then the button to the left of 1, you'll get that little symbol. And some programs will bump that up. I'll also do that over here. So let me go back, and I'll keep selecting this same color. Solid colors. And so anytime if I'm rendering and I see one of these, I know that it's incorrect and I missed, because in the 3D program you would go in and actually modify. Actually, let me erase all of these except for that first one, because it looks like I didn't get my faces flipped here. So we will reverse face it. No. Okay. Let me check the top two just to get that. So this is a case where I would have, this would actually be a reflective material. So let's do this. We'll move it 5 inches, x 8. Is that enough times? Hey, I guessed right. Okay. So that gives me that reflective material there, and I'm going to rename this to reflective material. I might just call it mirror too, but that gives me something to grab now when I go to select colors. So if I get away from this and we select a different color and we select this, you can see this still registers as T8 fluorescent, and this registers, oops, missed it. This register, oh come on, as reflective material. So if I was doing a mirror, for example, I could come in and all my mirrors would be the same reflective material. I could just call it mirror, but anyway, so all these should have that same name. If I go to change this color, we should see all of them change as well, so that's just another good reference for me. So then, depending on how accurate I wanted to get with this, I might even come in and apply this material here as well, because that all should be changing. But don't forget to then come back in and just change this trim back, because usually those are a little bit of a darker, or well, it's a more neutral color right there. All right, so let's grab a different light from here. So we've got this one right here, again, kind of another generic fluorescent. This one's a little bit easier to manage though, so it's still going to be that same pattern of a 4-foot light. Let's see, that's still grouped. So what I'm going to do is I will just start at this corner. Is this, yeah, 4 feet. I'm going to guess that's about 5 inches across. Yeah, that looks about right. And then I'm just going to, again, offset this in a 1/2 inch. Actually, let's do a 1/4 inch, because it's got a kind of thin bezel on it. And then I'm going to move this down so that we can kind of work with it a little bit more. Actually, let's actually go here first. So I'm going to make this, looks like it's about 2.5 inches tall. And then now we'll do this offset again, so 0.25. Come on. 0.25. And then again with this body on it, we're going to give it, again, just following kind of the material that we have here. I will give it that same color, and then we will grab the emissive material that I would later have to assign. We should do the same thing here for this one as well. And steel smoke. Okay, anyway, so we've got that. So then the other thing we've got going on here are those little ropes that it would hang down from. So having a lot of polygons in your model is something you want to kind of try to avoid, at least in cases where they're not important. So I'm just going to place a temporary line here, and then we're going to come in, say about 4 inches on each side. And then when I start this circle, I'm going to take the number of sides down from 24 to 7. And then I'm just going to make this really small. We're going to do, I mean, we're talking about a radius, so 1/16 of an inch is fine. That means it's an eighth of an inch across, which is still probably too thick. And then I have a couple options here. I can make this super long so that I can, if I make it 20 feet long, it'll stick out of whatever space I'm working in. Otherwise, I can just say, okay, well, they're all going to be 2 feet. And then once I've got that, I can just do a selection across here. And it looks like I've got it. And then we can just do another move copy coming across here. So that would give us that light, and again we can group this. Did we group this? No, we didn't. Okay, group that, and then we'll group that, and then these would typically be, well, I'm gonna center it. Let's see, so we'd go right there, and then we'll move it over 2 feet. 1 foot. There we go. 2 feet between gaps. Okay. And then if we want to place this directly on the ceiling, we'll just grab that endpoint on that fake wire that we created and then just move it up to the ceiling right there. Another thing you might want to work with are can lights, and they're actually kind of easier to draw from the ceiling. So let's say we've got a couple 6-inch can lights. Don't forget to change your number of sides back up for this. So I'm going to do 24 sides. We're going to do, we'll call this an 8-inch can light. So it's, sorry, let's do a 6-inch can light. So we'll do a 3-inch radius on that. We'll pull this up. We'll make it about 6 inches deep. And then I'm going to kind of pull this off. Let's go over here so we can kind of see under this. We could work on it from the top and then flip it too, but whatever. Alright, so this side I'm going to just offset this. Again, this is going to be our 1/2 inch kind of, we're going to pop that out. And then if we delete that face, we now have the cam light. We can pull this back, though it might, looks like we're fine. Sometimes there's a little bit of a lip, so we can add that little bit of a lip right there. But let's reverse this face first. Or we can just pull this down. So we'll just pull this down 0.25. So then this part right here, this higher part of that ring, would be what actually sits flush with the surface of the ceiling. And then we can delete these other parts right there. We'll reverse that face. And then here again is where we would apply some kind of generic coating to it. And then we would sample our, so this is actually one where we'd probably want to do a different material because of fluorescent. This kind of, those T8 fluorescents are going to have a different emissive quality than we would get from one of these. So let's see if we can find those again. Grab that, and we're going to call this our 4-inch cam light. I forget what the bulbs are called in these, but there are certain things that you can do to kind of find out how much light they would put out, and then I would just set that to be appropriate for that light. This is another option you can have too. When you place bulbs, one of the things you can do is download what are called IES files. It's Illuminating Engineering Society. And what they are is data that represents how a bulb projects its light. So not every bulb is just sort of a cone in a straight area that's completely, completely even. A bunch of different light bulbs are going to have different patterns. And so you can apply IES files to them in some rendering programs. I did them in a couple cases for projects I worked on, but at the time the project or the program I was using was not very user-friendly, and you had to, number one, you had to do every single light manually, and number two, every time you updated your model, you had to reapply it. So if you had 200 lights, you would not want to do that. Whereas if you had, say, 5 lights, you could probably be bothered to do that. Anyway, so this is our can light, and you can make it deeper or wider too. Like I have kind of a deep one here, but if you want, you can just pull this down. Maybe it's only going to be, you know, like an inch deep like that. And then we can go ahead and group this, and then again I'm going to use that part of the ring right there, and we can place this on the ceiling. This is a great place to use, let's see, we will do, wait, forgot what program I'm in. Okay, so if we do intersect faces with model, that will generate a little circle here. You guys didn't see it, but I know it did it. Or it should have done it, yeah. So it just cut a little hole in that ceiling there. So let me repeat that process just because it's kind of confusing. Drawing a rectangle here, and I'm pretty sure I went over this tool with you guys. But if we do intersect faces with model, this rectangle that I just drew here is going to find any models it intersects with, and then it's going to add a circle right there, which is what we were trying to grab. So now that that's there, I can triple click on it here, go into my ceiling, paste in place, and then I'm going to double click on it, and that should give me a cut, though it looks like it didn't. Let's just do the interface there. No. Oh, is it because I didn't cut it right? Try that again. Where are we? Okay. So we got that cut. Oh. Okay. So I got it. Eventually. So you can do that with can lights. Just remember the problem with them, again, just like kind of some of these inset fluorescents, that you're gonna have to go in there and actually cut away part of your ceiling. So if I wanted to move this light, let's say I wanted to put it over here, or I wanted just even add another one that's 5 feet over here, well, now I have to move the hole that was over here too. So I can come in here, and usually SketchUp's pretty good about moving holes if you're doing one at a time like that. So that would give me the hole there that I could use for that light as well. But again, it kind of becomes more problematic when you're doing, say, 15 on a sloped roof, or, you know, a roof that has a unusual slope. So let's see, what other kind of lights? All right, so yeah, let's move to wall-based lights. So let me just do a search here. So we've got a couple other ones here. We've got, so, you know, some sconces like that, right? So those are, oops, go away. Okay, so those are pretty easy to build too, especially if it's nice and geometric like that. We could do something like, we would make it, let's say 6 inches across, and then what about 8 inches tall, 10 inches tall, and then probably 1.5, so 3 wide at the bottom, but I'm going to have to go from the center here. So I'm going to do 1.5 each side. And then we'll just pull this out. Let's do another 4 inches there. And then, again, I'm kind of going off one of these. So we would put a recess here. I'll offset this. Just like 0.25. Oops. Come on, 0.25. And then we'll just push this up another 0.25. Negative 0.25. Okay. And then same thing up here. 0.25, negative 0.25. And then pull this down 0.25. Okay. So that gives us another one. And then again, we would have to apply another one of these materials. We'll call this wall sconce 1. And we'll apply that to both sides so it would get that correct emissiveness. And then we can just triple click on it, deselect the two sections we don't want to apply color to, and then apply color to the rest. In the case of the one that's the other side, facing the other way, it's easy enough to just flip this 180. And then I think that one was darker. Oops. Oh no, now I'm in the ceiling. Okay. And then, again, it's probably easier to just sample this than recolor it the other way around. So that's how you could create those kinds. Just kind of depends on how you want to model them. Let's see, we've got other ones like this. This would actually be, this one's kind of cool in the way that it has that kind of slope on it. So actually, let me show you guys how to do that. So let's get these grouped, and then we'll just go ahead and move them along the wall. And then, so for the light I was looking at there, let's go ahead and just go, let's say 8 inches across, and then we're going to do an arc to give it sort of that depth right there. We'll make it about, what, 4 inches tall. Yeah. And then it looks like it kind of comes out. So what I'm going to do is just do another 0.25 inch lip right here. Pull this through. So we've got that hollow space. Then I'm going to group this. And what I'm going to do is add another one of those cutting planes like I did with the previous thing. With the holes for the cannon lights. So I've got this right here. And we'll lock in on that direction, and we'll take this down. That looks good, so we'll just call that 8 degrees, and then we'll get a mirror. We'll get a mirror off of this. Oh, come on. We'll do 180, and then move this over, and then we'll just draw a rectangle so these connect. Slightly better chance of it working nicely that way. So then we can do, we'll cut that out, paste in place inside of here, intersect faces with selection, and now if we go and erase all this right here, we're left with the two faces right here, and then we have this space right here that we can cut away on both. So now we've got, oh, and then let's just get rid of that little bit right there. That little bit right there. And then, depending on how you want to set up your light source, we could do, say, darker color for that, and then this whole back wall right here, we could sample. Oops. I'm just going to be lazy here. And we'll just resample this for that whole back. Or potentially we could just do that whole side too. It kind of depends on how bright that turns out. Whatever works, as long as you get that kind of correctly configured. Let's see. Eventually you guys will probably get into making kind of interesting standing lamps. So let me grab kind of standing lamp. So we've got the ultra generic, ultra classic, just kind of stand pole and a bowl kind of light on the top. So let's do one of those because they're pretty easy to do. I've shown you guys before how to do that profile cutting. So what we'll do is we'll just make this right here 2 inches thick. We'll give it a, 5-inch radius, 4-inch radius. So we'll make this profile right here, and then we'll draw a circle on that, and then we'll use this profile right here. So we'll go, let's say it's 6 feet tall, and then here at the top, let's say that bowl is also going to be about the same width as the base. So we'll take this out, We'll just match up with that base. And then we'll have an arc here. Let's make it, how tall should this be? Let's do 3 inches. And then bring this out about 1.5. 1.5. And then this part I'm just going to kind of freehand, so we'll get sort of an appropriate angle for that right there. So we've got that floating out there. We'll do this, so we'll get this part of the bowl. You know what I didn't do is we didn't offset this yet. So that pole's probably half an inch thick, so we'll make this offset. No, we'll make the offset a quarter or half inch so that we have a 1 inch thick pole on this. 0.5. Okay. Yeah, it looks like I got the line of that wrong. All right, so we'll do that right there. This will be the sort of fixture that it sits on. So I'm just, again, I'm going to kind of freehand some of this. And then we'll do another one for up here. And not quite that far. What is that? 15/16. We'll do 13/16. Okay, so once we've done that, we can erase a lot of these guides here. Just make sure that you're working with one plane. It's not subdivided like that is right there. And then again, we can take the follow me tool at this point. Yeah. And then we'll just click on it, have it follow its own base, and we're left with a lamp. With one of these, you'd probably, again, you're going to go with black for the main material, and then this bowl up at the top, you would go with, so this is a case where you'd oh, you know what I didn't do? I didn't give the bowl any thickness. So let's go in here, we'll offset this in just a tiny amount, like very thin. Some 3D programs will be able to actually take that and generate a translucent surface there with that material. So now we can get rid of that. All right, let's, oh no, did it break? It broke. It didn't like it being that thin. Yeah. So let's make it a little bit. Nope. Just this much. Okay. Yeah, just a little bit thicker there. And then, oh, this is probably why I didn't do that on it. Okay. So once it's got that going on, we can take the follow me tool, have it follow around, triple click, assign a darker color to it, and then this bowl should be kind of, well, bowl shaped. A little bit of an edge right here. If we wanted to, we could try and assign this as its own emissive material, but realistically, you're going to be working primarily with one of your standard emissive surfaces, and then that would just project light generally upwards. If I didn't build this tall enough, the nice thing about these is you can just take it and, you know, oh, it's another foot taller. So those are kind of handy to place around. You know, if you want to get crazier with your lights, you're more than welcome to. Let's see, take that. It looked a little bit thick. So yeah, there's a variety of different lights there. Couple different techniques to build them. So we did, you know, instead moving and copying, we did this with the, we did the hole in the ceiling to actually place these can lights. Did the intersect with model and group for some of these. So yeah, there's a couple different techniques you can use to build lights. Just kind of whatever the light is you're trying to build, um, try and break it down into a recognizable geometric shape that you can create, right? I didn't try and like create this bowl from a circle. I just used that cut method. Um, you know, it's just kind of learning to separate things into components you can model in SketchUp, basically. Um, and then, you know, obviously you can go down a rabbit hole like with these. You know, maybe you should offset this like 1/8 of an inch from the wall, so that it has a chance to put a little bit of a shadow here. And if you really want to get into the weeds, you could actually model the, you know, back end that touches it. So there's different things you can do. Um, Another thing that I guess is worth mentioning, um, is like under cabinet lighting. So let's say we've got 36-inch high counter, 2 foot, 1, 1, 32, 3, and 3. So we've got a generic countertop right here. We'll go ahead and push that across. And then above this, we've got, say, like a cabinet. We'll make it, say, 18 inches tall. And then, so what you would expect is, oh, the cabinet's going to be 10 inches out. And this is sort of just quickly throwing this together. Actually, let's do 12 inches. So bring this out another 2. And so then what you might have, if you want an under cabinet lighting, one thing I would do for that is I would actually come back in and I would do a little bit of an offset, because typically there is this space under them that you can use for that. So if these were my cabinets above my countertop, I could come in here and then you as the modeler are kind of up to how you want to do some of this stuff. So if I went in here, I could come in and just draw rectangles on this surface and go, yeah, these are my under cabinet lights, and then move these around. Maybe you've got a whole bunch of them, or even you've just got, say, a strip that you just offset right here. So you've got a 2-inch thing right here, and that's all just going to be the surface that you use for your under cabinet lighting. All of those work fine. You can even have just, if these were grouped, you could even just have a thing you model, and again, I would pull this out if you're going to be doing this, just so that it's away from that surface, and then just create a group of little strips like these that you would use along this there as well. So there's different ways you can do that, and again, you could also do that to the top as well, just to create that kind of lighting effect. And of course, you know, if you're talking about really fancy high-end design, you could also have one of these chilling down here too for ground lighting. So there's different things you can do with lighting. Hopefully that kind of answers some of your guys' questions about that, and touches on a little bit more kind of the advanced modeling techniques. Let's see. Are there any other interesting lamps I want to try and model? Not really. Yeah. Yeah, there's some crazy ones out there. You know, some of them, like, let me just show you guys what I'm looking at here. So, come on. So some of these, like, you know, if I was going to model this, I'd probably actually do 3 separate little bowls, you know, and then a cylinder, and then some of these might be extra things that I model as part of that revolution. But you can see how visually you can just break down this lamp as a bunch of little individual segments that you could model, or just one that you could just kind of separate things off of. This one, again, you're just looking at sort of that same shape pattern here. I would model this top separately from this bottom, especially since this has 5 sides. I'd find a way to kind of build one slice of this and then copy it around 4 more times in the center. This, again, pretty easy. Create a sphere or half a sphere and then work your way down. This one looks like a bit of a nightmare, but it's more just kind of, you've got this same thing repeating back and forth. So you can see kind of how a lot of light designs are going to follow the same pattern. Um, as you know, as I did with this, it's just more detail in that process. This one right here, I would stay away from. Of course, it didn't take us to the lamp I clicked on. So yeah, there's just a whole bunch of different ways you can do lights, lamps, light fixtures, things like that. It just kind of depends on how you want to model it and what it is. So I'll go ahead and call the lecture at that. And if you guys have any questions, let me know in class.